What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So this week, Halo Infinite officially launches with a full campaign, and I'm really excited to see what's next for Master Chief. But leading up to the weekend, things were getting a lot worse with Halo Infinite, specifically on their subreddit, to the point where they had to shut it down, and we're going to go over that one here today. Also, we're going to be talking about a new addition for the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack that, of course, is bringing its own controversy with it, and we're also going to be talking about that Project Spartacus that was leaked out by Bloomberg, showing Sony's new service heading into 2022. Guys, if you enjoyed these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton, and if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below and ring that notification bell so you can keep up to date with all the uploads here on the channel. And we're going to start today with the Game Awards. That's also coming up this week, but we do have that Player's Choice Award that essentially is like the popularity contest where everyone gets to vote for a ton of titles, and it'll slowly get whittled down to where we have one game left. And we can see this over on Twitter. Jeff Keighley sharing the last 10 games, I guess, that will be advancing, say 2.5 hours left in Player's Choice voting round 1 for the Game Awards. And if we take a look here, at the top is Halo Infinite at 7%, which is sort of funny because the campaign isn't out yet, but hey, there you go. People are voting, I guess, thinking of the multiplayer currently, which, like I said, the multiplayer is very good with the gameplay that they have. Resident Evil Village, then we have Forza Horizon 5, It Takes Two, Metroid Dread, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, Psychonauts 2, Fortnite for some reason, and then Deathloop. I say Fortnite because it's not a new game, but I guess they're throwing different things in here that have had like seasonal releases and expansions. Either way though, head on by to the Game Awards and get your vote in. I believe they will also then go down, I guess cut this in half again, down to 5, and eventually we'll get to one game that everyone has at least voted the majority for. Also, as we are wrapping up this year, we are getting some announcements for different events to look forward to in 2022. One of which is Summer Games Fest, and again, we can see this over on Twitter from Jeff Keighley saying, while we are hard at work on the Game Awards, I'm excited to share that Summer Game Fest will return in summer 2022. Stay tuned for more details, and it's not too surprising. It's Jeff Keighley, who's not going to be really part of E3 anymore, running his own E3, and he's pretty good at getting game announcements for his different shows, so why not continue running it? I mean, it really showed up because we didn't have an E3 one year, and it was all over the place. It's a bit more organized this past year, and I guess maybe it'll get better as we go along. It really continues to make for a very packed summer overall. We have E3 to look forward to with a bunch of announcements, and then we have Summer Game Fest right next to it. But here's hoping we just have some good big time announcements to look forward to in summer 2022. Oh, and here's some surprising news for Quake. It looks like we have a new Horde mode and even add-on for the game. Take a look at this over on Bethesda's website saying Update 2 contains a brand new Horde mode made by Machine Games with 1 to 4 player co-op that's including optional bots, a new add-on Honey, and some quality of life improvements and bug fixes. They describe Horde mode here, an all-new multiplayer PvE experience designed by Machine Games, supports 1 to 4 players or bots in local or online multiplayer modes, which is pretty cool to see that. Playable on all difficulty levels, and includes 4 new maps specifically designed for Horde mode. So this is incredible. Obviously getting new content for Quake in 2021 right now. I really like the amount of support they are putting behind this game. I mean, it's a classic, right? It's Quake. So it is really cool to see this, and it's probably, I mean, one of the best games you can buy for $10 right now across the board on all platforms. We even had things like high frame rate being added in and advanced haptic feedback on the PS5 side with that DualSense controller. So very impressive stuff. Who knows? Maybe we get to a point where we have a brand new Quake game, maybe a full reboot for the series. But for now, $10 gets you pretty good look in to one of the best titles, I would say, for first-person shooters way back in the day in the 90s. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the entire situation that spiraled out of control around Halo Infinite, specifically on the multiplayer side, and I've voiced a lot of my criticisms around the product that's been presented so far in the beta, and 343 has been responding as we've gone along, some of their short-term plans that are more band-aid fixes, as well as some of their long-term plans. However, things really came to a head on the subreddit to the point where they had to shut everything down. Let's head over here to the message that was pinned detailing this shutdown, where they say on all sides has absolutely gone on long enough and spiraled out of control. The amount of toxicity on the sub from both sides has made it impossible for people to have civil discussions, which is what the mod team strives for regardless of opinion. Some users on the sub have even been responsible for doxing and death threats. We're temporarily putting the sub on lockdown so people can hopefully settle down a bit and we can hit the reset button before launch. At the end of the day, this is a video game and this level of vitriol is unwarranted. Take the weekend off. We're reopening on Monday. So I think it goes without saying, and it's very obvious that yes, these are video games. You get to a level where you're doxing and you're threatening people and it goes beyond that video game. Yeah, there's a major problem then. It has spiraled out of control. And it's a shame because if you really step back and look at it, the purpose of this subreddit where you have the community able to at least express opinions, concerns, and their thoughts on the game is a great way to get feedback to 343 in what should be a very organized fashion. But I will say, I looked at that Reddit over the past week or so, and the front page was indeed just flooded with basically the same thing, talking about the cosmetic store that, I mean, at one point there was one thread on there that was massively upvoted. I even talked about it at one point in a video showcasing how much it costs for all the cosmetics. And yes, that is a major concern. There are a lot of issues with the Halo Infinite multiplayer, but I think most of us understand it should stay with the game itself and not spill over to where people are getting to the level of threatening different people in the community or at 343 and even doxing. So while I'm sure there are a lot of people who are at least trying to give feedback and communicate, you do also have people come in who just muddy up the waters and gets to a point where the entire subreddit is shut down. And like I said, that is a shame because that then would hurt Halo Infinite, which I assume is a game that everyone is converging here on this subreddit to attempt to improve overall in the short term and in the long term. In fact, we are starting to hear from 343 that they have plans for all kinds of stuff. But remember, we are coming up to the holiday period where a lot of developers, studios, publishers go on break for a little while there. And most of this stuff they wouldn't be able to pick up and work on until after the holiday. Remember when they gave us that initial Halo Infinite update after that disastrous showing last year? They said, hey, we're going to be able to talk about this a bit more after the holiday. That's kind of what we're seeing here. I believe the reason we had that experience boost after like so many games is it was an easier quick fix, and other things like playlists are going to take a little more time. I will say it is a bit strange that Team Slayer wasn't a playlist that was initially planned out because that and CTF are staples of the multiplayer Halo Online experience. So it's a bit head-scratching that it was absent, but still, I would like to assume that it's something they will be working to improve and fix as we head into next year. In fact, it looks like they have several modes already lined up to be going live, I would say at any time now. I mean, there was this image that leaked out as people realized that if you went and launched Halo Infinite offline on PC, you could see all kinds of different playlists, which includes Fiesta CTF, Fiesta One Flag, Fiesta Strongholds. That's going to be mayhem, by the way. Fiesta Strongholds. It was also talked about how there will be a free-for-all game mode, and you can also see attrition, dodgeball, elimination, tactical, which I believe should be SWAT, as that was also detailed. So yes, they're at least listening and paying attention to a lot of this. It just becomes difficult when there is a lot of noise being thrown into the mix here with the Halo subreddit spiraling out of control. So I feel like for the majority of people who are online playing Halo Infinite, enjoying it, and really going back to the old days of Halo with this release, at least so far with the beta, are probably not on the subreddit doxing and threatening people there, right? So again, it goes without saying, don't do that. Just criticize the game and give some feedback as to how it can improve, so that way we can get to the end goal that we all want, which is a really good Halo game. Next up, let's talk about the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack and a new game that's going to be heading to the service this week. We can see this trailer from Nintendo, and that is Paper Mario heading to the service on December 10th. I really like the trailer that Nintendo put together for it because Paper Mario is an absolute classic. If you have never played it and you're already signed up to the expansion pack now, I would certainly be checking it out. It was very creative when it released, and the commercials were really cool too because they did different things in like an office where they had Princess Peach held over like a shredder in the office. Of course, they're all made out of paper, and it was a really funny commercial at the time. Good marketing campaign. Even the demo out of the magazine was you had to cut Paper Mario out and you could play with the piece of paper. But anyway, certainly check this one out. Really enjoyed it back then. I think it's actually aged pretty well now. We'll see how the emulation is, of course, which is always a concern there. But clearly the big thing here right now, everyone's looking at this and saying, are we just getting one N64 game and update? And I mean, maybe. The problem with the 64 is there's not a lot of games for Nintendo necessarily to pull from. If they do 2 or 3 games, even a quarter, they might be running out of N64 games a bit sooner than they were hoping. But the biggest thing here is they don't have to always do a Nintendo 64 game every single month if they also have, or multiple 64 games, if they also do Super Nintendo, Genesis, Nintendo, they have a lot of systems to pull from. It's just a bit strange that we see this update and it's just one game for a service overall that's $50 a year, and is certainly leaning more on the library of games they have available rather than the services that they're providing. And that's gonna be the biggest thing to watch as we head into next year, especially early on, January or February. Do we have a more substantial update that maybe has a Nintendo 64 game, 2 Genesis games, a Super Nintendo, or just a mix overall to where we have like 4 or 5 games being added in for an update? Could this just be something where they're throwing it in there? Look, we've already showed you all these games we're bringing for the 64. I want to just get one in there before the holiday season, and then we'll kind of regroup to start next year. Could be wishful thinking for me, but that's kind of where I'm sitting. I'm hoping that we hear in January or February at the latest that there is a more substantial update with more content coming in. They can start really putting in some of those big time N64 games that people heard about and are looking forward to. Think of like F-Zero X or Majora's Mask. Again, a lot of stuff they could throw in there that would make this service more and more appealing as we go through the next 12 months. If you signed up, you're probably just kind of hanging out, just hoping that more stuff gets added in a hurry. But for now, Paper Mario, great game, check it out. Don't think I would sign up for the service just yet because Paper Mario's being added, but if you are, you definitely want to check out what I would say is a classic RPG from the Nintendo 64. Next up, let's talk about Project Spartacus. This leaked out on Friday from Bloomberg in a full report going over it. I talked a bit about my initial thoughts on Saturday, so check out that video if you want to see a more in-depth look and some of the questions I was raising around this service. But we can see this tweet from Nebelian, who did a good job summarizing it, makes it a bit easier to put it on the screen here. I will also leave a link to the Bloomberg article in the sources if you want to read through the full report there. We can see it's available on PS4 and PS5, expected in the spring for 2022. We'll merge PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Now, and we have 3 different tiers. Tier 1 is PlayStation Plus benefits. Tier 2, access to PS4 and select PS5 games. Then Tier 3 is access to the classic library. Sony is also investing more heavily into cloud gaming. You might be wondering, okay, what's that classic library? Well, according to the report, we're looking at PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, and PlayStation portable games, which is actually kind of interesting. In fact, out of those 3, that's the one I'm most curious about because they would have to do some enhancements, I assume, around the visual quality. So when you are actually playing it on your much larger screen as opposed to the small PSP screen, it won't just look like a Vaseline smeared mess there. But from what I've been able to gather, because I have asked around a bit, the PS3 side of things, unfortunately, will probably still be cloud streamed as it is now with PlayStation Now. They could also do some improvements, move up to like 1080p streaming as an example, just be more responsive, maybe some improvements for the streaming experience, but unfortunately, it doesn't appear that it's going to be a natively emulated experience, essentially, on your system. PS1 and PS2 and PSP all should be, however, as they do have emulators for those games already functioning on the PlayStation Now. And judging by the library across those systems, Sony has a lot they can pull from, but if you look at like the PS1, there were a lot of third-party games that mostly held up that system, so Sony's probably gonna have to look around and pay out some money to get those games there. But you go up to like PS2, you get more involvement from Sony's first parties there, and then obviously into the PS3 and beyond there. But this could potentially be a really good service if Sony is able to, I would say, jam-pack it with classic titles across the board. Remember, one of the biggest things about Nintendo is we talk about the drip feed and the lack of games in general, or the smaller library for something like the Nintendo 64, but we had the same thing with the Super Nintendo and Nintendo. Didn't start out with a ton of games, but they have built it to over 100 titles between those two systems. And can you imagine, we have a subscription service from Sony where they have hundreds of PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PS3, PSP games packed into this service as what's been described that would be quite an offering if they pick the right games or able to get the licensing for the right games. Something to keep an eye on here, along with the pricing and, again, the availability across the board. We'll keep an eye on this as we head into next year, because it does look like this report from Bloomberg was a bit early, as we're going to be, I'm sure, hearing more and more about this from other outlets heading into the year. In our last bit of news, let's talk about a dispute between Hazelight and Take-Two, specifically though for the game It Takes Two and its name. We can see this over on Eurogamer, where they say the acclaimed co-op puzzler about a pair of divorcing parents was struck by a trademark claim before its release earlier this year. It has emerged. Records show developer Hazelight subsequently abandoned ownership of the name. Now, Eurogamer did reach out to Hazelight. However, a spokesperson said the studio cannot comment on ongoing disputes, and they're hopeful it will be resolved. But they go on further to say Hazelight did not dispute it had been forced to abandon the trademark to its game because of Take-Two, something which can be seen in this notice of abandonment sent to the US Patent Office shortly after Take-Two's claim was filed. They didn't comment on any potential renaming of the game, any of the marketing, anything they have planned around what you would normally have ownership of that title, It Takes Two. And Eurogamer does a pretty good job pointing out that this isn't new to Take-Two at all. In fact, they seem to trademark and attempt to enforce this around what you would look at as pretty basic wording or language. Things like Rockstar, Social Club, Mafia, Civilization. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And we pretty much know that Take-Two is one of the most aggressive companies, that does include even Nintendo, when it comes to pursuing legal action for different things around their properties, even coming down to what feels like common words being used. Yeah, if you're a company like Hazelight coming up making this awesome game, It Takes Two, you feel like you want to continue doing different things with that title, have ownership over it, but because Take and Two are just situated in that title, it becomes a problem with a much larger company that, yeah, has much deeper pockets. It does come down to that kind of bully scenario with Take-Two kind of taking over these different words, even going outside of the video game space. Apparently they're pursuing things for music and like different stores. So again, Take-Two being very aggressive around this stuff, and I'm hoping Hazelight can get this worked out, because it would be a shame if they really did have to just abandon complete ownership over a game they came up with because it has two words that Take-Two believes they completely own overall. So we'll see how this one works out as we go forward. Let me know what your thoughts are around this whole situation. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, have you played Paper Mario before from the N64? 37% said yes, I played it at least once before. 63% said no, I've never played it. I've been asking a lot of these polls because I am genuinely curious to see what kind of split we're gonna have here on games that I figure are just classics, and at times you look at it and you go, oh, well, yeah, everyone's played that game. Not necessarily, which makes sense why you see so many companies doing remasters or remakes of these different classic games, because yeah, there's a lot of new gamers who come in every single generation. I mean, the Switch exploded in popularity for Nintendo. I mean, if you had sure, this game's been on Virtual Console before, but not a lot of people bought the Wii U. 64 games didn't go to the 3DS, so it would have been a Wii? That came out back in 2006. So yeah, a lot of people for the first time are picking up their own Nintendo system, that being with the Switch, and now they get to go back and check out, once again, a classic like Paper Mario for the first time. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Commander Shepard, saying, speaking of movies as cutscenes, back in the day, Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers blew my mind with the actual inclusion of movie cutscenes to progress the storyline and how seamless the transitions were from gameplay to that. Love that about that game. Yeah, there's a lot of small things that things we don't think about now that appear small. Back in the day, they were massive, right? You just talked about having actual full motion cutscenes that would line up with the movie, or even, as you're saying, scenes completely out of the movie that then transition to gameplay. You talk about actual full on voiced audio. That was a big deal, right? Or you even get into things as basic as fingers on the characters. Remember we had like the ball, like just the fist constantly when you're playing Nintendo 64 or PlayStation 1 games. Then we went up to like the PS2 and the GameCube and Xbox. We're like, whoa, they have actual fingers they can articulate. So yeah, little things like that we don't even really notice now were massive just like a couple of decades ago. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike, leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Where's the Halo Infinite situation on the subreddit being completely shut down? Or what about Project Spartacus from Sony? And Paper Mario being added, great game, but do you think Nintendo's gonna maybe speed up some of these releases and throw on more games as we head into next year? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.